I'm curious to hear your guys' opinions on whether or not you think SEO genius should lead the way, or if you think operational excellence leads to better SEO campaigns.
Even if you're an expert at something, if you can't execute on what you know, then we have problems. Right? I can know how to do something, but how to efficiently execute it at scale introduces a lot of roadblocks. So taking the time for making sure that there is that operational excellence, I would put that slightly above expertise.
I personally would maybe lean towards more operational excellency, because if you have a good operational standpoint and you have everything in order, I have my SOPs and all that stuff, and everything in order, then even if I step away for a couple of moments, it can run on its own. SEO is helpful, it's 100% helpful. So I would say they kind of go hand in hand, but I lean more towards the operational excellency.
Hey guys, welcome to another great episode of SEO On-Air. I'm your host, Koa Kawe, and this is brought to you by Stan Ventures. Got two agency owners on with us today, both in different stages of the agency world, and we're excited to kind of put a little bit of a space between them and have them discuss the differences that they have strategically, operationally, and where they see the potential to learn from each other on today's call. I'm going to start with you, Matt. Give us a little background on who you are and what your agency does.
Yeah, my name's Matt Post, co-founder of SEM Dynamics. We're a full-service agency from paid ads all the way through organic, whether it's organic Google, organic social. Personally, I've been developing websites since, I got to do the math, 30 years. This is my 30th year. So 96 is when I started building websites. I started SEO in 97, a few months before Google came out. So I started with Hotbot and Yahoo and all that fun stuff. And so, I've been doing this for quite some time.
You've seen a few changes in SEO along the way then, right?
A couple here and there.
And I'm going to be curious about how many times you've seen those changes come right back into the same pattern that used to exist before, because the cyclical side of SEO has been something we've been talking about recently.
All the time.
Hey, Don, tell us a little bit about yourself and your agency.
Hey, good afternoon. My name is Don Wallace. I'm the founder and CEO of Designs by Don W. We pretty much help people from beginning to end. We try to be a one-stop shop. So we help people with the ideation of their organization, such kind of give them guidelines and pointers on how to grow as a company and brand themselves properly.
Yeah, I think branding was something that you discussed pretty well with me when we had our pre-call about prepping for the podcast. It seemed like that was an important part of what you've been doing.
Yes, I do feel as if your brand is everything. Yes, SEO is also something too, but people are going to know you based off how you market yourself. And appearance to me is everything and stuff like that, and first impressions.
Okay, I think I'm going to start off with my first question, actually a little different than what I intended, or maybe even scripted for you guys. I told you what it might be talking about. The question of brand, actually, I think is a really interesting place to start when we talk about local businesses. And even Matt, with the time that you've been in the market, the industry, the term and even the definition of that feels like it's way more broad today than what it was in the past. Matt, I'm going to start with you on this one. Tell me how you've seen the term branding evolve over your career.
In terms of SEO, branding wasn't a factor in the beginning, late 90s, early 2000s, which prompted a lot of, it's actually why Google became what Google is today in terms of their manual and automated penalty systems and things of that sort, just because, quite frankly, SEOs take advantage when we can. That's kind of our job. It's why we exist. But we have doorway pages and repeating keywords as many times you could on a page and blah, 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 all that stuff that hopefully most of us don't do anymore. And so branding was not a consideration. You were able to build brand because you got top positioning. Now it's inverse, where building a brand will give you leaps and bounds ahead of other companies that have not really paid attention to brand in being able to establish a top presence easier organically. We've seen it. We've quantified the lowering of cost per click in Google Ads and also the increase in conversion rate. I think brand is huge, and a lot of misinformation is out there in the perception of clients, where they think they come to us as SEOs and say, "Hey, I want top placement because I want business." And so, but they haven't really spent the time to build that foundation. And brand is not just foundational, but it's ongoing. It is the voice of your company. It's your differentiator. It's not just your logo and your color scheme, your typography. It's who you are. It's your identity. And in a traditional sense, that's always been there. That's been there since, the 20s and 1940s. Early on, we had print going into traditional. Right, that was understood. Digital, in terms of how long digital has been around for internet advertising, caught on quickly. But we're still, 80 years behind traditional. So everything kind of seems like we're playing catch up. And so we thought of digital as being a shortcut. Not necessarily. Now, you can brute force brand through ad spend, but you can do that traditionally as well. If you had a bunch of money, Coca-Cola can spend, $1 billion on a new brand. So you can brute force your way in, but you still have to go through those steps of establishing what identity you want. How do you want to be perceived in the marketplace? And so it's inverted when directly correlated to SEO, from what I've seen.
I think it's interesting that you talk about the evolution of brand, like whether it was newspapers, Yellow Book being in like AAA plumbers or whatever it was, and then when it became digital and everyone wanted to be like world's best plumbers, everyone was trying to claim that shortcut. Don, what are you seeing today from like the modern view of brand and how it's affecting your customers? What are the shortcuts people are trying to take, and what are the results of those shortcuts?
Branding, it's very interesting because, like Matt was saying, like, it's more than just your logo and your color schemes. People think that, if you have like a really strong color, you'll stand out more. And then if you have like a really like eye-catching logo, you'll pop and you're like, oh man, I remember this person. But in my opinion, like there are more avenues to it. You can't just go based off the basic, oh, well, this is my logo. This is what I'm about. Like, what are you doing differently than every other person? Like, John Doe does this. How are you standing out? And what makes your brand different from their brand if you guys are selling the same product?
Yeah. And I think you bring into a good point in that we're talking value proposition, right? Like, your value proposition is core to your brand, and 100%. And it's great to see other people realizing that, because a lot of people don't. A lot of people skip it and they miss it. Like, it's an important step that people just don't get into.
And I tell people all the time, like, if you're selling a sweater, whatever, and then what's the difference between your sweater and Target sweater or Walmart sweater or Amazon sweater? Like, what makes me come to you and say, I'm going to buy your sweater, and what makes it different, and what makes your brand stand out even more than their brand?
Absolutely.
That's how I try to get clients to understand that they need branding is everything. And I'm not saying, like, ultimately I would never, crap on your brand or anything like that. But I want to know what makes you so strongly and what makes you so passionate about why you feel as if you can sell your product, and what makes somebody want to come and buy it.
Yeah. So Flint McLaughlin, he's the founder of Mech Labs. We've done some stuff with him in the past. He Mech Labs is like one of the oldest research institutes on conversion rate optimization. They started in early to mid 90s and they saw the internet as the perfect testing platform for like human psychology and answering the question, why do people say yes? And so he took like what you said, and you've almost known exactly verbatim what he says. The question that we're answering in a value proposition is, we have to look from the perspective of the ideal client, and then ask the question, if I was your ideal client, why would I hire you versus your competitor? Right? And then we want to list those answers, and there should be multiple answers, and we look at the perception of how attractive that answer is from the perspective of the ideal client, and then how exclusive, or what's the perception of exclusivity. And if we get something that's highly attractive and very exclusive, you've got a winning value proposition, and it's about uncovering what that is. And so, yeah, I mean, you've almost exactly what you've said is what's been studied, researched, and used for since heydays of the internet. In fact, the call I was on just before this call was an hour and a half long conversation answering that question. So yeah, 100%.
You guys have me like thinking about you as like sharks, like Shark Tank sharks. Like, I never thought about the investment that an agency is actually putting into the customer. because you make money off of it. There's the margin for you to be profitable in the service, but some agencies will disqualify a customer strictly based off of them wanting unrealistic expectations and them knowing that they're not going to invest in them and not see success.
But that's what makes the difference between somebody who cares as an agency versus someone who's doing it to make a quick buck. You know, like I said, I tell people all the time, like ultimately, like yes, you can pay me for this; it's not a problem. But I would want to rather set the expectation of this conversation at the beginning than to go into it 6 months later and you say, "Hey, I'm not satisfied. Why am I not getting results?" And this conversation could have been easily had at the very beginning, and then that also affects my brand and my reputation. You know, because I don't know who you may know, but at the end of the day, like you may say, "Oh, this person sucks," or "This person does this is not wrong." And I'd rather have a clear representation of what, like, set guidelines and boundaries and expectations at the beginning, and may lose the potential of a couple money over ruining my ultimately end goal brand.
No, I love that. My next question actually kind of stems from that, because when you talk about brand being your reputation, brand is obviously expanded much further than your website today, right? Like that's when I talk brand with a lot of agencies, we talk Reddit and Quora and reviews and every LLM and top of Google and Bing and everything else, right? So your brand is really like, and your social media. So it's like, it's literally everywhere. And a lot of these companies, when they're first starting, they don't really understand the depth of what I call search engine optimization, search everywhere optimization at this point. I feel like it's evolved to be brand needs to be broadcast across a lot of different categories. But when you have this customer that's first starting out, there's this question of like, what directories do I need to be in? Like, how do I even list you correctly in my city? Google my business profiles and all the different things that you understand very intuitively because you've been doing SEO, but a customer doesn't understand. And today I'd love to have you guys help us understand from like, when you're explaining this to the customer, maybe even explaining it to me as if I am your customer, help me understand where I need to be today to be successful, because I don't really know where my name needs to be to get the right viewers to come check out my business.
So my first question to you would be, what are you trying to sell?
Well, I'll give you a hypothetical then. I'll say that I think I use AAA plumbers. So I'll say I'm a plumber and I'll say I'm in a mid-sized city in Texas.
Okay. So my first question would be, how long have you been doing this plumbing?
Well, it's actually the second month. I just decided to split out on my own and run my own business.
Okay. Okay. So first and foremost, I would say, I strongly feel that everybody needs to be on Google. For my business. So I set you up with a Google My Business page and such. You know, I'll ask if you have a physical address, physical location. However, what I also will do is I will set you up on Bing as well for Bing search. In my opinion, in my experiences, I've seen people actually use Bing still, and have their own page set up on there and such, and that's pretty interesting. But then I would also try to see, you know, what are the directories that you could possibly be on besides Google My Business? What's your budget for ads? Like, do you have enough money to run ads?
So if I'm trying to throw this out here, like I need to be on Bing, I need to be on Google My Business profile. Local directories is vague, right? Like there's a ton of different directories, but you would say find the local directories and get me listed there. And then I come down to like a website, and Matt's been building websites for a long time too. Websites feel like they've changed a little bit, right? I can't just list every single city on my pages and say that I do service in like a 50-mile radius. How am I trying to tell Google where I do business now? Like exactly how are they recognizing it from the page standpoint?
What I've come to do is maybe like, you know, have like I guess have like a general area and such, like zip codes, for example. Like you could have like one city, Orlando, like for example, Orlando, and then I have at least over 30 zip codes in my city alone. So you can set up your ads to kind of point to those specific zip codes people to see in that area, along with kind of listing your services available too for traffic, for the ad spend and stuff like that. Now, if you're doing more of an organic approach, you kind of want to make sure that you embed those keywords into your content on your website per page. I wouldn't do a general location page. I would kind of service, you know, I would say, you know, we service Orlando, the greater Orlando area, and not really mention the zip codes on my one websites for you guys. But I would mention kind of like key areas like in those surrounding parts of the city you're trying to target.
Matt, are you aligned here?
Yeah. I would take the conversation slightly, just a shift in how we approach this type of conversation of explaining to a new business owner where they should be found online, essentially, aside from Google's the obvious one.
Because I just want more people to show up to my business, right? Give me a phone call.
Yeah, exactly. So what we want to do is we want to look at two things. One, we want to look at where are your competitors found online, because Google wants to have a neighborhood, if you will, of authority and expertise. If you want to be one of the cool kids that are at the top 3 positions, top 5 positions, you've got to do what the cool kids are doing to sit down at the cool kid table. So because of that, we want to look at what the competition's doing, do competitive analysis, and say where are they listed, and replicate that. It's just one additional signal that can help you sit at that cool kids table, and that cool kids table is the top placement. Next, we want to do a little bit of research into your ideal client. This is why we want to have that ideal client conversation at the very beginning. If we understand the ideal client, especially for a plumbing business like yours, we need to, you can't help everybody. Everybody is not the ideal client, and we can focus our efforts into those people that you actually want to work with, that make you happy and give you job satisfaction at the end of the day. We're going to do research and answer one question. Where do your ideal clients go online for information? And we want to make sure that you're listed there. We can use, so side note is we want to talk about systems. Rand Fishkin started a great SaaS offering called SparkToro that allows you to do a lot of this research fairly automated that can uncover ideal clients and where they go online for information, whether it's podcasts, YouTube channels, what social profiles are followed. Say we're talking Reddit, like what subreddits do they actually consume information? And then we want to make sure that you're listed there. And those are the ones we want to pay particular attention to. Like the competitors, we want the listing, yes. But where your ideal clients are going for information, that's where we want to make sure that we're spending additional efforts to have ongoing relationships with whatever that may be. And this may take us down a path of traditional advertising as well. Maybe we need you to sponsor the local event in your community. And here's the local events. Why? Because that's going to build community trust. That's going to give you, again, building brand in a way that's not digital. And most competitors are going to not look at where other SEO agencies are going to not concentrate on, and they're going to overlook these opportunities. We're going to look at meetup groups. Say there's, there as whoever the decision maker is or the ideal client, are there meetup groups in your local community? If so, we can very inexpensively sponsor those meetup groups and get additional brand and backlinks from those, whether they're follow or no follows, different conversation that ebbs and flows with that platform. But we have seen being able to be included in newsletter communications, sponsoring physical events, getting the digital sponsorship, all through Meetup, and at a very, very low price. The squeeze is definitely worth the juice in those types of scenarios.
Yeah, I think I appreciate that. That it's Don, like you said too. Like, what are you selling, right? Like, that was the first thing you asked me is like, hey, who's the competition here? Like, what do we really understand about your business, and what are we trying to do with you? Because I think that's cool to take it from a competitive standpoint and really, hey, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. There's some good examples right here. Let's see if we can beat them. Let's find out what they're doing well.
And I love how Matt was saying like Google loves neighborhoods. Like that's a very good point. Like they do. Like they love to have like the first couple people like, okay, like this is all this neighborhood you want to kind of live in and stuff like that.
It's a really good sales analogy. It's one I haven't heard before.
I definitely might have to borrow that, Matt.
So one thing that happens too, we know a lot of the agencies we talk to, whether they had an experience working for a larger agency and they've started on their own, or they're in the process of scaling out their own agency. There's this complication to, hey, we really know how to do it well for like one customer, or we really know how to do it well for a handful of customers. The question has come up on the podcast a few times where there's a difference between like SEO genius and operational excellence, and what you think is more valuable in the world today for digital marketing. And I'm curious to hear your guys' opinions on whether or not you think SEO genius should lead the way, or if you think operational excellence leads to better SEO campaigns.
I want to say SEO expertise, just because I've been doing it for so long. But I think even if you're an expert at something, if you can't execute on what you know, then we have problems, right? I can know how to do something, but how to efficiently execute it at scale introduces a lot of roadblocks. So taking the time for making sure that there is that operational excellence, I would put that slightly above expertise.
This is like a chicken or the egg kind of situation.
I would mainly kind of like what he says, like, you could be an expert on something. I personally would maybe like lean towards like more operational excellency because ultimately, you could like I can be an expert in making phones, but if I don't have that strong foundation and if my operation isn't like strong enough to like stay on its own, it's like a building. If it doesn't have a strong foundation, it's gonna fall. I feel as if you have a good operational standpoint and you have everything in order, like I have my like SOPs and all that stuff and everything in order, then even if like I step away for a couple of moments, it can run on its own. Um, of course, having the knowledge of SEO it is helpful, it's 100% helpful. And I feel that if in order to kind of like have strong operational excellence, you need to have at least some type of background. So I would say they kind of go hand in hand, but I lean more towards the operational excellency.
I think both of us, Don, we're in agreement that we're saying operational excellence, but that does not exclude that you got to know what you're doing, right? Like I can create an amazing SOP on building cars. You don't want me to build a car unless you want a lot of accidents, right? I don't know anything about building cars.
You gotta have the experience. Like I can tell you, oh yeah, I know what an H2 tag is. I know what an H1 tag is. But do I know how to properly structure it? Like what makes it like what keywords are going to be in those H2 and H1 tags?
Let me ask you guys this then, because I do think this is fun from like the SEO genius side of it. There's a lot of people that maybe have simple operations that do like the standard practices of SEO and do a pretty good job if it's a very simple campaign, right? Like you can get citations, you can get the GMB profile set up unless you run into an error and then you're needing to call Google and you don't know how to get a hold of them and all that other stuff. But what are the most common issues that you see from agencies that maybe represent that they're maybe lacking the SEO genius and more just along the lines of operational excellence? What are you asking a customer to look for in a good agency to find that they have both?
If we look at the technicals of a website, it's a pretty good indicator. When we look at, and this is difficult to explain to a potential customer, but internally when we're looking, where we look at a competition and we say we got them, we know that we can beat the competitors, is in internal linking, because so many people get internal linking and URL structure and hierarchy absolutely wrong in what they should be doing. And so when we see top rankings where that is lacking, we know we can come in and have some really good movement. And this is in terms of very, very competitive local markets. As an agency, we control over 2,000 top 10 listings for personal injury in Los Angeles. So we're talking about very, very high competitive markets, very, very high budgets, and there are many websites, say within that space, that are even missing that kind of foundational structure.
I want to ask a question on that to just understand, why is that valuable, right? Like I know that there's backlinking. We do work for generating authority, but why in the world is linking a bunch of your own pages back to themselves valuable from an SEO standpoint? How is that helping people understand what you do?
It shows a connection in topics and ideas. And if we are creating a page having to do, say for the plumbing company, if we had a page having to do with repiping, and we had a local, hyper-local page, we want those two to be linked back and forth. User experience, right? Ideally, they want to be able to navigate easily back from one to the other. And we want to indicate that this page that we're creating is relevant to this entire entity that we've established on the website.
So do you think that's communicating to Google then? It's telling like the different crawls that these are all connected, this is more relevant than you thought it was, and there's other competitors that are not doing this?
Yeah, it's about giving, I guess, focus to Google in terms of being able to establish.
Is it a variation of like schema, maybe, like even just like helping it understand at a deeper level what you do because they're connected?
I mean, schema would be more for rich snippets and things of that sort, but it's more and there you can expand through schema and being able to connect the dots with some of the markup. But mainly, what I'm talking about is being able to establish a relationship of pages to say that all these pages are part of the same entity. And so let's look at all these services about this hyperlocal page within this vacuum, if you will. And then we have all these other buckets and segments as well. So if you have multiple hyperlocal pages and multiple service pages that are for each one of these hyperlocal pages, we're now creating buckets of content. And we need to be able to establish that what has to do with what. We don't want to cross these lines too much and say, or else you can start like cannibalizing yourself if you want. You know, who says that if you have 20 repiping pages, well, which one is Google going to rank for the city of Anaheim? Even if you're saying Anaheim within the content, you can send further signaling by having all of these pages that are talking about Anaheim and the topic of plumbing interconnected with each other and not linking out to your hyperlocal page talking about, Nashville.
I use the term authority, but I think the term credibility actually maybe comes to mind as like what interlinking is doing for the service that you're talking about. Like you're adding depth to it, you're adding credibility to what that you actually know about that. Don, I cut you off though. I'm sorry. I'll let you jump in here.
Oh no, you're fine. I was gonna say kind of like how I market it is basically like you want to make sure that your website is like a knowledge, is like a library. I shouldn't have to be redirected to another person's website. All of my questions should be answered based on everything on my site for whatever you need. I want to make sure that hey, okay, well, this person linked about this. Well, oh, they have a hyperlink. Let's click that. Oh, they talk about this too. This also builds more trust because now I know that you're knowledgeable in everything you're trying to sell me. It creates a strong like trust relationship because now I'm like, okay, well, you know what? You talked about this. You know what you're talking about. It's basically like, oh, well, you know how to build a car. You know this. Like, you go to your mechanic. Okay, well, you know what's wrong with my car. I don't. So that's like if I'm telling you about your car, oh well, I don't know why your car is making this rattling sound. Go two shops down, they'll probably be able to tell you.
Yeah, it seems like it's been a low hanging fruit for a lot. Like a lot of agencies didn't do any type of interlinking at all in the website, and now there's like the agencies that figured out this is helping. And I think the more modern agencies are taking a quick adoption of that tactic.
Well, yeah, that and even like URL hierarchy where everybody's putting all the URLs on tier one. It's like, well, if everything is important, nothing's important. But let's build a hierarchy that makes sense so that your blog article doesn't sit on the same URL hierarchy as your primary service page, because that blog article probably isn't as important as that service page to the user and to the business owner and to Google.
I mean, it's a conversation of operational excellence coming into play there too, because you can have all the right thoughts, but then you have to have the team executing this and even adapting as the services change and the customer's opinion changes about what's the priority. I think the next question I have for you guys is actually, we talk about that being credibility, but I still am thinking about authority as I mentioned that. Authority seems to be something that with Google, you knew what it was. It was, building some backlinks and making sure that you were the most recommended, is how I kind of phrased it, like had the most online reviews because there was more websites talking about your website than maybe your competitor. Authority seems to have evolved a little bit. Obviously, the baseline is still an essential piece of this, but how are you guys viewing authority in a world where LLMs are taking such a, I mean, we talk about the traffic, they're taking such a role in the traffic and visibility of your customers' websites. How are you viewing authority today? Do you feel like it's changed from where it was a few years ago?
I don't think authority has changed by definition, but it's changed in potentially execution on how you want to establish that authority. I mean, backlinks are always going to be important. They can be important to the user. So just from that standpoint, they should be a consideration. I think Google wants to and portrays backlinks as being less important than what they are. And
they also tell you not to optimize, like not to do SEO, kind of, right? So
sure, exactly. Yeah. You're going to penalize you. Well, I mean, let's look at the elephant in the room. We're going to penalize you for paying for a backlink. Like, yeah, but if I'm hiring somebody to do PR outreach, are they not paying for a backlink? I mean, and I'm not saying that we're going to go out and do all this like crazy black hat stuff and send out 10,000 different links on Russian website. I mean, that's a different conversation. But and then also properly attributing those links and all that fun stuff. This is a whole like rabbit hole conversation we get into. But with backlinks, they're important. And having a site that can attract links and have that authority, and therefore people want to link to you, is important. This is going to go back to the initial point that Don made about branding. If you have a strong brand, and if you're involved in the community, and you're found in the right directories, and you're in those right places, and your voice is out there, and you are creating and establishing a brand, you will be that company that other outlets will want to bring into that conversation. If you're sponsoring that little league team, there's nothing wrong with saying, "Hey, do you mind giving me some credit? You want to put my logo on your page? You want to link to my page?" You would ask that anyways. Now, I would be hard pressed to believe that Google's would be like, "No, we see that, we're not going to count it." They can tell me that all day long, but doing the right thing. Say if I was sponsoring a nonprofit organization that was saving lives of starving children, they wrote an article about me and gave me a link on their website. Is Google like, "Nope, that's sponsored"?
And the difficulty of them even knowing it. But then we walk that balance of like the brand issue again, right? Like if Google removed all authority from every single website, then everyone just comes down to content, and anyone can create content saying they're the best. Whether or not they're really established and credible, there's limited variables that can be trusted to say that someone is more credible, more authoritative, more trustworthy than the other options. And it seems like backlinks, whether it's PR links or even sometimes the paid backlinks, if the company has the means to compete at that level, it really shows them as more credible than maybe some of the smaller competition. Would you say that's fair? Do you think that that's like really the level? Like it's almost like paid ads, where those that have the most money to spend are usually going to be visible the most often.
I mean, even if you take it away from just like, if we're not talking about paid backlinks, does a company that has enough money to have large PR campaigns behind them, are they going to have an advantage? Absolutely. You have a larger marketing budget.
Don, jump in here, then I'll switch over to the next question. It aligns up well.
So I do feel as if like kind of what Matt was saying was just like just be like you can build authority and have things like that based off of what it is that you're trying to do. Like I said, if he like he was saying, like, if I sponsor a baseball team, I don't think there's anything wrong with getting my name out there, kind of showing, hey, like, this is how you're seen. Like, this is a trustworthy brand. I'm going to trust them over, or I'm sorry, not brand, a company over something that somebody else is doing. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to spend a whole bunch of money on different things and such. You can just build that just by kind of, being knowledgeable, in my opinion, kind of show the authority to make sure that you have what it takes to really show that you know what you're talking about.
Yeah, the effort goes a long way there just to make the connections, like whether it's the networking events or other things that you could be tagged in for the local presence. I think it makes a huge difference.
And you bring up a good point, kind of a differentiator, something that you brought up that's I think is spot on is, I said, yeah, if you have a big budget, you can just buy your way into the market for just out of sheer brute force. You just have more marketing power, but you have two things going for you as a business owner in being able to scale your business. You either have time or you have money. If you don't have the large budget as the big guys, you have time or have somebody that has time. That's why agencies exist, right? You don't have the time to do all these things. We do for you.
And we're operationally excellent at doing them, right?
Exactly, operationally excellent. But you don't have to buy your way in. You can spend the time to establishing the relationships. And I would argue that time in establishing those relationships within a community will be more valuable in the long run than just buying your way in.
Yeah, I think that's very valid. I think those relationships go a long way, especially with local businesses where being ranked number one doesn't necessarily mean that everyone likes you the most, right? Like there's still a local reputation that you have to hold strong to. So this is a perfect transition to my question, because my next question is really about the lines of like small agencies to large agencies. And I'll say it aggressively because I talk to both, but there's a definitely an opinion from some of the smaller agencies that the larger agencies tend to lose their soul a little bit to maybe financial excellence, right? Where they start managing the process so well from a monetary standpoint that the service may feel like it's dropped off, or they're trying to reduce their costs and maybe bring in less expertise account managers than used to manage the service, or even the fact that they need to hire a ton of people and they just have a hard time matching the quality of their initial hires. And as things scale, the quality tends to drop. I think the ones that are excellent are the ones that kind of find a way to balance the two of them. But I'm curious to hear what you guys think from the scaling standpoint. How do agencies maintain that that quality as they grow? And I know you're in the early, like you're not necessarily 50-person, 100-person agencies, but where do you see these problems with the bigger agencies, and where are your customers talking about those problems?
For me, I've seen it, companies get too big for their britches. Like they see the potential in something and they see the monetary value of it, and they just want to go straight to it. They pour their money and they pour their efforts into different things instead of what makes them their bread and butter, so to speak. Case in point, I work for an agency, and I'm not going to say their agency name, but they kept screwing over the web department because they wanted to make more profit in the long run. I think that that's a terrible approach, and they didn't really consult us too much into that matter. And they were just more so like, okay, well, you guys just kind of do the work, don't worry about it, and then we'll give you guys what to do. If the whole company isn't like, if every part of the puzzle isn't completed, then you're going to have a very terrible looking puzzle. That's kind of where my standpoint on that is. It really doesn't really, and it horribly affects employees because you don't feel like you can grow as that in that position you're in. You're going to eventually lose that employee. So that kind of doesn't align with what most employees kind of stand for with the company they're with.
That's a really interesting answer. I think you got me thinking a lot about the culture of an agency and how that's really changed. Matt, I'm going to let you jump in before I share my thoughts.
There's a couple points here. First, with losing their soul in terms of the deliverables, the KPIs from the client perspective, that's in the foundation, and a knowing when to say no, not growing too fast, making sure that things are set in place as they should be, and investing, going the opposite direction, not looking for that greater revenue and that greater return, but putting the safety checks in place, the quality control in place to ensure that these steps aren't being missed. This is when hiring the right people for the right job to oversee these projects comes really, really, really strongly into play, and having a system of checks and balances. In scale, larger companies, I've seen some that have done this well, and I've seen some that haven't. I've been on the receiving end of that as a customer in various industries where well polished and ones that are not. And I think it's an issue not just within the agency realm, but every business when you're talking about scaling. How do you not lose yourself in that? The other half of this is internally. When you're doing things like that to a web development team, you're going to demoralize them. And are they going to be as effective? Are they going to be looking out for the company's best interest? Absolutely not. Why? Like, when you're treated, quite frankly, if you're treated like garbage, like, why are you going to care as much as you did beforehand? You're not. You wouldn't expect anybody to. So with that, you've got to, take pride in your employees to the extent that there's realization that these are the people that have built your business, that they're humans, they have families, they have lives, they have things outside of what your wants and needs are of them. Take care of them, they're going to take care of you, and make sure that they're just being treated, like, be a decent person, I guess. It's weird to even say that, but like, it's easy to get lost up in the money, though. So I understand that, like, hey, as a business owner, like, it's easy to be like, you're very focused on revenue and growth and revenue and growth. You got to stop and say, okay, have checks and balances for yourself, where you have other people that can put you in check and say, hey, your core values, your internal core values are this, which, if you don't have internal core values at the very beginning, have external and internal core values that you can look at, and you can have somebody play devil's advocate about how your business is ran and point out areas that you may need some adjustments. And if you have those in place, I think it's really difficult to fall into that negative experience.
There's a couple of agencies that I've talked to recently that stand out in this conversation. One of them was a 100-person agency, over 100 employees. They even dedicated like a massive amount of employees just to their AI team. Like, they're really, really aggressive on their AI growth. But the first thing that he said, I think, when he introduced his companies was like, we help our customers like destroy their revenue growth goals. And he repeated it multiple times, and it was like it was not. And I think Matt, you hit it on the head where a lot of people sometimes get hung up on like the hey, we make a bunch of money, right? Like they just think like we make money, and then your manager thinks like, hey, this is more profitable if we sell more of these than if we sell more of these, and you really lose the customer in that sense because you're now thinking about your profitability and not necessarily their profitability. And I think that it's really interesting because that one culture was very much we drive the revenue, like for our customers to destroy their revenue goal. And the other one that stands out to me was one that I think there were maybe 20 or 30 employees, still a fairly large agency, but their culture was we do that one extra step. And it was strictly like we think a little bit more about what we're doing for you than the other team is going to. Like we challenge each other to take the step beyond the norm. And I thought that both of them were very much like driving a culture that drives customer first priorities rather than dollar first priorities. And I think that those are two things that you're looking for in an agency. Like you're looking for someone that's going to understand you at a high level or understands your business at a high enough level to say, I'm going to massively increase your revenue goals, not just like your goal of getting seen. That's an interesting, you guys have both helped me kind of piece that together as I've thought about those two agencies over the last week that we had the recording. And I think that's really fascinating to think that the culture of those is very much pro customer, not necessarily the dollar. And the dollar's got to be part of that. So don't get me wrong.
Yeah, you can't be running a negative net, like that's, but we don't need to be having 90% margins on the backs of our employees as well.
It also kind of, forces the hand of, well, I'm going to quit this agency. I'm going to run my own agency. And then you have a employee that you let go that went and started his own thing because he got tired of being driven by profit, and that creates other.
Yeah, that's right along the lines of what Matt said. Like that margin's way high for the company, and you have a bunch of employees that either don't feel valued or feel like they're robbing their customers, and all of a sudden they want their values to be the values of the agency that they work at, and they make a change.
Yeah, what's that saying? People don't they don't quit bosses, they don't quit jobs, they quit bosses.
Well, one thing I like to end with is just an understanding of like what a customer should be looking for in a good agency. So I want from both of your perspectives, if a customer were listening to this and they were saying, I don't know who to pick. There's a bunch of agencies in my city. What are some of the tells that you would look for to show them that they were picking the right agency?
Specifically for SEO or marketing in general?
For SEO in general, either way, actually, however you want to do it, define it for our customers so that they can understand what they should be looking for.
I will give the suggestion that Google gave, and in a conversation that gave somebody I was standing next to. I was working for a personal injury law firm, and we were invited to the Google headquarters. And he asked the person at Google, like, hey, if we want to hire somebody, to help with our SEO, like, what should we be doing? And they're like, well, Google SEO agency for law firms and see who shows up. Like, but during the conversation, you probably want to, get referrals and follow up and actually have those discussions with people that they have worked with. Look at what, not from face value of just the case study of what they've achieved, but what have they, who are their current clients, and look into where do they rank. Have a conversation with that business owner. Personal referrals and recommendations are great.
It's a really funny, simple recommendation that says, hey, your SEO agency should probably be one of the top ranking SEO agencies to prove they know how to do it right.
Now, the downside of that is a lot of times you can end up with an agency that focuses on just ranking themselves and not their clients.
They've had the money to rank, not necessarily the culture that matches it. Don, tell me what you think.
I would kind of have I would have a one-on-one personal conversation with you saying, what are your realistic goals that you are trying to set for you, and where do you see yourself scaling and within the year? Give me a 12-month plan that you have to really kind of set the realistic expectations. Like if I'm saying, hey, where do you see yourself at, year 2 of this, if we do this, stuff like that, how do you see yourself growing, or where do you see yourself at that point? And that's kind of how I built that relationship with them.
I think it's an interesting perspective of having checks and balances in place. Like you can't go into an agency without understanding exactly what you want beforehand. Otherwise, they're going to have to guess.
I can sell you oh yeah, I can do this website, I can get you ranking, but what are your goals? I can rank based off for me, but I want to rank for you. Like, what do you want to see, and how can I help you get to that point where you want?
I think you're prioritizing probably the number one problem that every agency ever runs into is a customer that doesn't necessarily understand their own brand before they come over, and they don't really know what they need. They just want more money. Now, we could probably have a whole other podcast recording session on that one and how you pull that information out of the customers, because that's another interesting conversation. But I think for the sake of time, we'll leave with that recommendation that maybe just Google it and ask the right questions, know what you actually want. I think all the value of AI comes into play there, where they can do some research for themselves before they dive into it with the marketing team. You guys have probably had some scary stories along those lines too, though. So we won't give them too much power. Guys, Matt, Don, I really appreciate your time and being on this episode of SEO On Air. We'll see you next time.